Many. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I am again very grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak in this place once again on behalf of the good and wonderful people of the East Grand Bahama constituency. Mr. Deputy, I also was informed today, actually by the member for West End, or the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, that Ms. Doris Smith has, from Grand Bahama, has passed away, I believe, today. And so we want to say to her family, she is a very, very well-respected, well-known person in Grand Bahama, and we are praying for her family, and we wish the family well as they go through this difficult time. Mr. Deputy, I am very pleased to be able to contribute to the debate that we are debating today, this resolution on the Human Rights Committee. And Mr. Deputy, we have been, I believe, going in a cordial way today. I believe that we have not been having a lot of negative back and forward. However, despite the way that we've been going so far, I may have to just adjust a bit going forward. So, Mr. Deputy, the Davis administration does not have a good record with parliamentary committees.
Come on.
They do not, unfortunately, have a good record with parliamentary committees. Unfortunately, I have not heard anything today that has changed this view, that has made me believe that us putting in place a human rights parliamentary committee will be any different. That the management of the committees and the way that they have managed the parliamentary committees prior does not instill confidence that will change things and that this Human Rights Committee will change things. The Fiscal Responsibility Council, Mr. Deputy, which was put in place to scrutinize the government's fiscal policies and also to scrutinize the government's fiscal strategy, really has been decimated. It has not reported. The constitution of that committee has been changed. So instead of the committee being appointed by the Speaker, the committee now is appointed by the Minister of Finance. They also have changed and have put in place a confidentiality clause and have made it an offense that if the Ministry of Finance makes something confidential and they speak to the public about it, then it is an offense to be able to speak for them to speak to the public about what the Ministry of Finance says is confidential. But they are designed, the committee was designed to be a committee that scrutinized, that held the government to account, that held the Ministry of Finance to account, to be able to look at the documents, require those documents to come, and then to be able to make the report on those documents. The Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee has been temporarily stopped by what I would call technical arguments. The Attorney General has instructed public officials not to comply with the committee's summons. The committee has sent out a summons, has sent out requests, and the Attorney General himself has instructed the public servants not to comply with the committee's summons. And point of order?
Just a point of correction.
Well,
Or clarification, that is.
No,
Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Deputy, unless it is a point of order, fine.
Mr. Deputy, just would like to clarify, the Attorney General may have asked or requested public servants, right? Or instructed, if you want to use the word instruct, if he may have instructed public servants. However, that does not comprise the entire committee. That was the one individual. So there's no reason for the committee not to meet. I'm a member of that committee, and I haven't seen any summonses to attend a meeting since. So it may be unfair to say that the Attorney General, has stopped the meetings of the Public Accounts Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member.
Mr. Deputy, let me go back through my notes. The Public Accounts Committee has been temporarily stopped by technical arguments. The Attorney General has instructed public officials not to comply with a committee summons. Now, Mr. Deputy, the opposition also attempted to form a select committee on immigration, which I would suggest would have discussed some of the same issues that this committee, this Human Rights Committee, would also be looking at. That select committee was outright rejected. So if, as a matter of course, that we have said that we are going to, we would like a select committee on immigration to look into all of the matters as it relates to immigration, and you have said, no, a select committee is not required. We have our policy, and we are proceeding with our policy. So as I have said, Mr. Deputy, the government does not have a good record, in my view. They do not have a good record when it comes to parliamentary committees. However, taking into account the importance of this committee, we are compelled to give this committee every chance to succeed. So the reality is, you have not instilled any confidence in us when it comes to parliamentary committees, based on your track record when it comes to the Public Accounts Committee, based on your track record when it comes to the Fiscal Responsibility Council, and also when it comes to our request for a select committee on immigration. However, because of the importance of this committee, we will support your efforts in putting this committee in place. Now, let me also say, though, that this committee may fall by the wayside. It may be just a committee where you formed a committee today and you have a couple of meetings and you put in place a report and that's it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I have not heard anything that is going to instill confidence that, yes, this is going to be a real committee and that you are really going to make a difference when it comes to proceeding. But I believe, Mr. Deputy, that if this committee is constituted correctly and with the right leadership and the right mandate, the committee can do some good in this country. Now, Mr. Deputy, when it comes to putting in place this committee, when it comes to the Parliament really is the ultimate voice of the people in this country. So putting in place a committee for human rights is really what we are elected to do. We are elected to oversee the government's affairs. We are elected to oversee what the government does. And so putting in place a parliamentary committee when it comes to human rights, I think is a natural fit, and it is something that parliaments all over the world have been doing. So us putting this in place, I think it is the proper and the right thing for us to be able to do. Parliaments, which are themselves the embodiment of the human right to participate in the conduct of the public affairs, is one of the countries, as one of the countries in Article 25 and 26 of the UD human rights, the United Nations development when it comes to human rights. Now, also, Parliament is supposed to be the body that the government reports to. They are supposed to be, the Parliament also is the body that's supposed to hold the government to account. In contrast to the government, judiciary, and civil society groups, parliaments are the place where government policies are and should be debated and scrutinized. So when it comes to putting in place government policy, judging it is what the Parliament is supposed to do. The Parliament is supposed to debate it, and the Parliament also is supposed to judge it. In Parliament, competing policy objectives are balanced to ensure respect for human rights and thus for the common good. We should be the watchdog on the executive, and therefore this is and should be the best place for to be watchdogs when it comes to human rights issues in our country. Now, whether one thinks of security, health, public transport, education, social security, agriculture, or immigration policy, parliamentary decision-making in each domain will have a direct and indirect effect on the extent to which people enjoy their human rights. So the fact that this is the place that we debate, we argue, we speak about security, health, public transport, education, social security, agriculture, and the immigration policy. This is where those decisions take place. And so the fact that those decisions take place, they directly affect our human rights. So this is the place to be. Parliamentary committees are supposed to be the way and are supposed to be the work that we do. We shouldn't just be here giving speeches, having a debate. But the real work should be the parliamentary committees. That is really what we should be doing and how we should be impacting the country. But we need proper facilities. We need more space. We need a website. We need more staff. Even Mr. Deputy, even our declaration that we fill in where, and all parliamentarians know this, where you must collect the form, write on the form, or type on the form, and then send that form in. When this day and age, it should be online, securely, where we should be able to type in. And those of us who've been here for a number of years, who've had to fill this form in for a number of years, I have a file that I have to keep my previous forms in so that I can make sure that the forms are consistent. But this should be where you put it online. So even these type things are things that we need to be advancing when it comes to our very own Parliament. So, Mr. Deputy, what is this committee mandated to do? We heard from the member for Freetown. We also heard from the member for Centerville that gave the point of reference of what this committee is supposed to do. But my question, though, is the committee able to move on items on their own? Or do they have to wait for the government to refer matters to them? So if the committee decided, or does the committee have the jurisdiction to decide on its own that it would like to look into different matters? If they decide that they would like to go down to the prison and look at the prison, or if they decided that they would like to go and look at the detention center, if they decided they wanted to go and look at the Simpson Penn Center, are they able to go and look at these matters on their own and independent from the government and make a report from the government or make a report to the government? A parliamentary committee that can only discuss human rights bills and issues referred to it by the House, for example, has a less margin to maneuver than committees that are able to independently determine their own agenda. So we would like to understand whether the committee is just a committee that is dictated by the government. You look at this, we send this to you, give us a report. Or is this a committee, is this truly going to be an independent committee that can receive issues from the public and can go ahead and independently investigate those issues independently of the government, that they can go ahead and investigate those issues? If they can do it independently, then my submission is you are on the right track to having a committee that really is going to make a difference in the country. If it is just a committee that is going to be dictated by the government, that here's what you look at, here's what we want back from you, then we know the way that is going to go. Also, does this committee have the ability to supervise government actions? So human rights committees may also supervise government programs, state institutions dealing with human rights, and the government's general progress towards and compliance with human rights norms. So will this committee have the ability to look at government institutions as it relates to human rights and make assessments, make fair judgments, and give reports on those institutions? Can they go to the prison? Can they go to the Simpson Pen? Can they go to the detention center and speak to people, look at these issues, and make a report back to Parliament, and make a report back to the government on what should be done in order to comply with, if they are not complying, this is what should be done in order to comply with the law. This committee also should have a mandate to educate the public. So this committee also should be able to take in information, and as was said by the member, I believe the member for Freetown, who spoke about all of the UN reports when it comes to human rights, to say to the public, these are indeed what your human rights are. You have the right to life, you have the right to work, you have the right to all of these different things. And so will this committee have the right to be able to go out and educate the public? Will this committee also have a right to approve funding? Human Rights Committee may also be entrusted with financial tasks, such as approving funding for certain human rights-related issues, for monitoring the efficiency of their implementation, and advising on funding for and financial review of human rights institutions. Are they going to be able to recommend to the Ministry of Finance that X amount of dollars be allocated for this, or X amount of dollars be allocated for that? We know that the Ministry of Finance really is the government body that deals with funding, but are they able to look at the entire situation and make recommendations to the Ministry of Finance? Well, let's, Mr. Deputy, look at what some other parliamentary committees for human rights are doing in other countries. And that would also give us an idea as to what our parliamentary committee could be doing, and what I would suggest some things that our parliamentary committee should be doing. So in December of 1999, the Justice Committee of the Bulgan House of Representatives proposed an amendment for the insertion in the penal code, calling for the universal condemnation of and prosecution for various fundamental social rights. So this committee should be looking at making recommendations to the government on changes for our penal code. When it comes to domestic violence, when it comes to our rights for children, this committee should be looking at those matters and also be making recommendations to the government. In the House of Representatives in the Philippines, they approved a bill proposed by the chair of the Human Rights Committee prohibiting the public display in a degrading manner of persons who are arrested or under arrest. In July of 2020, or July of 2002, at the initiative of the Human Rights Committee in Uruguay, they also made recommendations for the protection when it comes to domestic violence. The Human Rights Committee in the Parliament of Panama, they worked on a bill when it came to prison reform. So all of these we are hoping would be things that this parliamentary committee would be able to go into different departments, go into different areas of the country, and assess the state of government affairs, to assess the state of the entire country's affairs, and then to be able to make recommendations on those things. Also, when it comes to, there were certain parliaments that also looked at the child protection, how the government's laws are related to child protection, what those laws should be, look at what other countries have, and then make the proper recommendations when it comes to those laws. Mr. Deputy, in the Bahamas, we have a number of human rights issues that we are presently dealing with. And when I Googled human rights in the Bahamas, just to see what would come up, one of the first things that came up was the U.S. report of the Bahamas' record when it comes to human rights. And the U.S. does a report every year, and it's amazing that they report and are able to articulate in very great detail. I mean, this report is about 20-something pages. They are able to detail in very great, to state in very great detail all of the ways that they believe the Bahamas may or may not be complying with human rights. And the funny thing about it is, every one of them are already occurring in the United States. But already, yeah, they already, whatever is in the report for the Bahamas are all the same things are already occurring in the U.S. So, but it's a good, I would suggest it would be a good place to start in terms of at least looking at what is being said about the Bahamas and having this committee, for example, how the Public Accounts Committee is supposed to take certain reports and then take them apart and review them. And this may be a good report for the Human Rights Committee to take apart and to use as a guide every year to go ahead and review and look at these particular things. So one of the things inside the report that speaks about is when it comes to depriving someone of life or unlawfully or politically motivated killings. Well, they've spoken about, and again, this is what is being alleged in the report, but they've spoken about some police-related killings. Now, we know what those processes are, and we know that the processes, but the point that they made in the report was that the coroner's court determines whether the security forces or the police killings are justifiable and whether they should be prosecuted. However, they make the point that the Director of Public Prosecutions has yet to appoint a lawyer to marshal these cases. So again, this is something that the committee may need to look at. Why is it that those cases are not being marshaled? What needs to happen in order for those cases to be marshaled? That is one thing that this committee ought to or should be looking at. Another issue that was raised in this report was the torture of persons or going through degrading treatment and punishment and so on. And obviously they then point to the prison and the detention center conditions. The prison conditions, they say, are harsh due to overcrowding, inadequate sanitation, poor nutrition, and inadequate medical care. Having said this publicly, then this should be something that the Human Rights Committee goes in and takes a look at. Yes, the U.S. is saying that this is the case. Well, let's go and investigate it. Let's go and take a look at it, and then let's bring the report back to Parliament. Let's bring the report back to the government to say whether we believe this is the case or not. Have our persons go, or have the parliamentarians go and go to the prison, talk to the prisoners, see the conditions for themselves, go to the detention center, speak to the people in the detention center, and see what is going on in the detention center. Another point that was also raised was the Simpson Penn Center for Boys. This again should be something that we in the House, through the Human Rights Committee, should also be going into and looking at. They should be going and looking at what is being said about the Simpson Penn Center. They spoke about a pre-trial and spoke about those persons who were charged or who may be charged with immigration offenses and those persons who are being held for immigration offenses. They also, Mr. Deputy, one point that I wanted to also raise that they spoke about was the status of people who were displaced, but they also spoke about stateless persons. You know, I spoke to a lady, and I'll close with this. I spoke to a lady this week who said she was born in the Bahamas to non-Bahamian parents. She's gone to school in the Bahamas all her life, and I'm sure that parliamentarians all over have come across persons in this situation. And for whatever reason, she's unable to get a passport and has applied for citizenship and has been waiting for years. And this is one of the points that were made in this report, that there are people who've been waiting for 20 years, 20 plus years, waiting to hear whether they are going to be given a Bahamian citizenship or not. Well, this should be something that the Bahamas Human Rights Parliamentary Commission or Committee looks at, that we go into and hear the stories of people. She is someone who does not have a passport. And if she does not have a passport, then she had to get a national insurance card right after Dorian. So she almost slipped in to get a national insurance card. And if she doesn't have a passport, she cannot get a driver's license. And if she can't get a driver's license, she can't even get a job to Burger King or Kentucky to work. So she is forced to go without work, has 4 children, and which puts her in a situation where she has to go to social services. But she's someone who wants to work. And unfortunately, because of the situation that she's in, and she is, through no fault of her own, she has had to suffer through this. So, Mr. Deputy, it is my hope, it is my sincere hope, that this committee, which I do support, that this committee will look at these real issues and report when it comes to these real issues. And it is something really that I believe has a lot of potential and can make a real difference in our country if we are able to come together and if we are able to do some things. So East Grand Bahama, Mr. Deputy, supports the appointment of this committee.
Thank you, honorable member.